Years of effort to halt illegal logging are finally showing signs of success. But in Indonesia, the Brazilian Amazon, the Congo Basin and parts of West Africa, up to half of all timber is still illegally sourced. Large-scale deforestation causes damage, but when it's illegal, problems are particularly stark. Illegal logging deprives governments of revenue, robs local communities of the resources they depend on, damages forest ecosystems and fuels conflict. Illegal logging is a symptom of unclear ownership and mismanagement of forests. It thrives in areas where rule of law is weak and corruption is rife. Widespread high and low-level corruption is a key reason why illegal logging is so difficult to stop. Products made from illegal timber are traded all over the world and are hard to track. They may be part of the paper in your printer, the desk you're sitting at, the fence in your garden, the wrapping of your groceries, your takeaway coffee cup, or any of hundreds of other products. So, what needs to change? The first step is to improve the way forests are owned, used and managed. This is often referred to as forest governance. Good forest governance requires strong coordination, government departments working together and with others. Accountability, people taking responsibility for making and implementing decisions. Transparency, people making information accessible. Participation, people being involved in decision-making. And capacity, people having the time, money and knowledge to be involved. Law enforcement is key to good governance, but implementing bad laws can be worse than not having a law in the first place. It is essential, therefore, that all stakeholders are involved in improving forest-related laws, fighting corruption and strengthening the rights of communities living in and from the forests. To improve forest governance and combat illegal logging, the EU has an action plan which brings together measures to address forest law enforcement, governance and trade, FLEGT for short. FLEGT asks the EU to take 4 different types of action. To define what EU government should and shouldn't buy, EU procurement policies. To address the EU finances of illegal logging, financial due diligence. The creation and implementation of a new regulation to ensure timber used in the EU is legal. EU Timber Regulation, EUTR. Most importantly, it addresses poor forest governance through voluntary partnership agreements with timber-producing countries. Voluntary partnership agreements, or VPAs, are legally binding trade agreements between a timber-producing country and the EU. Uniquely, they represent consensus between government, private sector and local NGOs. In most countries, it's the first time local NGOs and sometimes local communities have been directly involved in the negotiation of policies. Importantly, local NGOs and communities have been able to assign their own representatives in all VPAs signed to date. With agreed representatives, decisions are more likely to be implemented in the long run. It also means laws are more likely to be just or legitimate and recognise and protect the rights of forest communities. A VPA gives a competitive advantage by granting countries improved access to buyers in the European Union. This means that even governments that have traditionally ignored civil society and had little respect for the rights of forest communities now have an economic incentive to change their behaviour. Analysing a country's forest-related laws and agreeing what to change and how to monitor the process takes time. But no real sustainable solution could be quick. And the VPAs have produced important successes along the way. NGO coalitions have begun to emerge in countries that previously had none, and new standards of transparency, participation and legal clarity have been established.
Before the VPA came about, the relationship between civil society and government and civil society and the private sector was screened. But following the VPA, it has become much better. The VPA has helped all stakeholders to identify issues, identify problems that are affecting good governance, and come together and resolve or identify ways to address those problems.
Actuellement, nous nous retrouvons, donc ça a donné l'opportunité à toutes les organisations de comprendre qu'ensemble, ils peuvent prendre des positions et ensemble, ils peuvent lutter à ce que ces positions soient prises par le gouvernement. Et ça fait que la société civile camerounaise, petit à petit, comprend déjà qu'ils peuvent en groupe faire des lobbying pour que certaines lois, certaines positions du gouvernement soient changées.
The challenge now is to put the agreements into practice. For FLEGT VPAs to work, governments must encourage NGOs and communities to develop skills to monitor and highlight illegalities, be willing to be transparent, and act once corruption and illegalities have been identified. If they don't, all their exports will be hampered. The struggle must continue to make sure that words on paper become action on the ground.